Hey everybody, this is Mr. Perry, and today we are going to talk about thesis statements and lots of important stuff that pertains to the difference between high school level thesis statements and college level thesis statements. So before we get started, I am identifying for you guys the fact that 2 out of the 3 essay types that you have to learn from my class require an original thesis statement from you guys as writers. So your goal, obviously, is to make sure you understand what a college level thesis statement is so that you can always aim for that. And, obviously, since we're talking about 2 out of the 3 essay types, it's going to be something that's really, really important to your ability to climb up that 9-point scale. So down here, thesis statements, we know that they have to address the prompt. This is one of the most common comments that I make on essays, is that you've got to make sure you understand the prompt so that you can craft a thesis statement that fully addresses it. We recently did the Lord of the Flies essay, where you had to look at what style of leadership is more effective, authoritative or collaborative, and you're instructed to use Lord of the Flies as a basis for your argument. So it's a good idea to make sure that all of those ideas are fully addressed in the prompt. And then from there, when we get to the body paragraphs and you get to your topic sentences, which will identify your main points, here's where you want to continue to attack the prompt. So whatever you end up stating in the thesis statement is reinforced throughout the body paragraphs with your topic sentence. And you want to make sure that you're continuing to use the keywords from the prompt so that you know with confidence that you are continuing to attack that prompt. So in the main points, or in the topic sentences where you're establishing those main points, you want to clearly state a specific reason to support your thesis and then build new ideas upon your argument. So before we get into thesis statements at the college level, I'm just going to bring up the handout that you got in class where we were looking at sample high school level thesis statements, all right? And a lot of them, many people in class pointed out that they tend to be a little bit shorter, and that's true, but you also have to look at the ideas that are embedded within them. This one right here, even though Jack's leadership in William Golding's Lord of the Flies leads to destruction, careful analysis reveals that it is actually more effective than Ralph's collaborative approach. All right, so that's true, or it can be at least argued as being true. The problem with this one is that it recognizes something really negative about Jack's leadership, but then goes on to try to establish that it's the better choice. And so this is one way that you can kind of contradict yourself in a thesis. You want to make sure that if you're going to argue in favor of authoritative leadership, then really every word of that thesis statement should present authoritative leadership in a positive light. So this first part where it admits that it leads to destruction or can lead to destruction, you would want to take that out. William Golding's Lord of the Flies contains many examples of strong leadership styles that the reader can analyze. This one actually fails to state a point, to make a claim. It doesn't say which one is better. It doesn't get into whether or not authoritative or collaborative is more effective, so it's kind of missing the prompt altogether. William Golding's Lord of the Flies illustrates the struggles between collaborative and authoritative leaders through the characters of Ralph and Jack, okay? And again, this is true, but it's not making a claim. It's not identifying which is more effective. This one down here, the benefits of Jack's authoritative leadership outnumber those of collaborative leadership, proving it to be a superior form of government. So that's getting better. It at least states a claim, and you can see it's making an attempt at bringing something in from outside the book. It's just not quite there. And then this last one is an example of what's called a 3-prong thesis statement. So if you got the comment from me on your essay that you're using what's called the 3-prong thesis, it probably looks like this. William Golding's Lord of the Flies shows the benefit of collaborative leadership in that the boys all feel included, it ensures a better chance of long-term survival, and it avoids the dangers of authoritative rule. All right, so what you have in this is a lot of middle school students learn what's called the 3-prong thesis, where you state your claim and then you kind of preview your main points that will be embedded in your 3 body paragraphs. And it's a good sort of starting point for thesis statements, but really now that you're in AP level classes and you want to try to get into that college level, it's a good idea to sort of rise above the 3-prong approach and just save these 3 ideas for the topic sentences. So your sample college level thesis statements, again, are identified here. So now we're going to get into the notes that we took today. On the back side of that sheet, there are some spots for you guys to take notes, all right? And at the very top, I want you to just understand these 3 concepts here, that college level thesis statements use forceful language. You want to avoid words like maybe or kind of or sort of. You want to make sure that your ideas don't, aren't too soft. You want to, again, use forceful, kind of bold language with your thesis statement, and not be afraid to kind of take some risks and, make some statements that are, maybe creative or intriguing or out of the box type thinking. The more forceful and bold you can be with your ideas, the better. You want to make sure you take a specific stance. That's obviously super important. You want to make sure that you avoid contradicting yourself either in words or in ideas. And then again, we've already talked about formal language, but just a good guideline, at all important points in an essay, you want to make sure that you're maintaining formal language as much as you can and aiming for upper level vocabulary. So below that, we have the magic thesis statement template. This is kind of a starting point for formulating a college level thesis. And it goes like this, so make sure you have this written down. By looking at blank, one can see blank, which most readers don't see, then a semicolon. This is important because blank. Now what the magic thesis statement template does is it breaks down what I call the 3 levels of thought that really need to be embedded within any college level thesis statement. So we're going to break these down a little bit further on the next slide. By looking at blank, so the first thing you want to do is insert something specific from the text or something specific from the prompt. By looking at authoritative leadership in William Golding's Lord of the Flies, all right, that would be one approach, or by looking at collaborative leadership from William Golding's Lord of the Flies. Again, here I'm saying in this book, there is something specific, and in this case, it's going to be either authoritative or collaborative. Next, we want one can see blank, which most readers don't see. All right, now here what you want to do is you want to identify why, whatever you put in that first blank, why it's important, something important about it, right? And you want to kind of get into something that is unique or original. All right, challenge yourself, try to pick out something unique about the text, try to pick out something maybe that other people wouldn't notice, something that you feel is kind of your own insight or your own understanding of what's going on, all right? But at the very least, you want to make sure you identify why something's important. So by looking at authoritative leadership in Lord of the Flies, one can see, at the very least, you want to say that it is the more effective leadership style, or that it is more effective than collaborative leadership. You want to, again, make sure you establish that point, that main point. And then finally, the most challenging part of it, this is important because blank. Here's where you want to take whatever you inserted in that first blank, and you want to connect it to something outside of the text or something outside of the prompt. You want to make it about society, about people in general. You want to make it about humanity, maybe gender roles, racism, attitudes, religious beliefs, politics. There's a whole list of things that you could connect to, a thesis statement. And this, again, requires some time, requires some thought. Here's where that critical thinking component of the class really becomes important. All right, and then the last thing is to always remember to revise your magic thesis statement. If you use the template, you usually end up with something that is too long and overly wordy, like this one here. By looking at authoritative leadership in William Golding's Lord of the Flies, one can see that it is more effective because it addresses the immediate needs of Jack's followers. This is important because society tends to choose self-preservation over what is best for the group. So here's my important thing that I'm analyzing. Here is why it's important, all right? And then here is the connecting it to something outside of the book. But this is just way too wordy and it's just kind of clunky. So what you would want to do is condense it, all right? This is a revised version. It's slightly shorter. It gets rid of that part that's in parentheses. It also deletes that semicolon. And you end up with this. As evidenced by William Golding's Lord of the Flies, authoritative leadership proves most effective by addressing the immediate needs of Jack's followers, highlighting society's tendency to choose self-preservation over what is best for the group. And then go on from there. So there's no one right way to write a college-level thesis statement, but if you make it your goal to just make sure you're thoroughly addressing the prompt, and make sure that you get into, why something is important, what it symbolizes, and if you can connect it to something outside of the prompt or outside of the text that you are analyzing, then you can proceed with confidence that you're doing things right, that you're either at college level or at least approaching college level with your thesis. All right.